pick if you are a Pirates fan.
Absolutely. And even better, the Cardinals are dead.
They
John.
did. Yes.
Joey Votto is back, and he's
Yay.
delightful. And the Reds are in first place. They're surging, big win streak for them. I mean, all the reporting over the next couple weeks has been they're going to be buyers at the deadline,
which is crazy to me. Not in like they shouldn't do that, but like I did not think we were going to get a Reds team that cared, you know?
Right? And then
That's
you
wild.
have like you look at the NL Central, like the Cubs are on a little bit of a weird little hot streak, but we don't believe that's going to continue.
Mm-hmm.
Pirates just not enough juice. The Brewers, we'll see if they hold on to Corbin Burns for the full summer.
I'm really wondering that now, given that the Brewers
had a
are
rough
no
June.
longer for it's been a bad June for them. I am really, really curious to see what comes next with them because, I mean, the room is there now if they slip further and further out of first to make that move, and I'm curious to see, you know, if we start hearing more chatter about Burns.
I mean, you look at this group. Where could they upgrade if they look at, like, I think this is sustainable. I think they're going to be a team that goes for it and that like the Fangraphs playoff odds are 40 and 35 right now, 20% chance. But like, okay, that's not great. But the Brewers at 47, you don't feel great about that. The Cubs at 21, like you look around, I just think you last a little bit longer. I think those playoff odds will continue to shift a little bit and just getting more and more comfortable that the Reds are for real, but also this is why you're buyers to kind of shake those playoff odds later on this summer. But
yeah,
I think there's enough reason where like it just kind of reminds me where they're at reminds me of where the Orioles were last year, where they were like, we were hoping that things would go well in this rebuild and that some guys would start hitting and popping a little bit, but
yeah,
I mean, this wasn't the plan, and then they didn't really do anything. They were kind of sneaky sellers, where they're like, we're still confident we'll be able to just pick up where we left off going into next year. And the Orioles have. Like, to their credit, the Orioles have been really good and have picked up right where they left off and didn't have a setback and didn't blow it by not going more in last year. But I'm very curious what buyers looks like for the Reds and where they can go and what kind of young players they're willing to sacrifice to become more buyers. I'm very curious. What do you think Cincinnati Reds 2023 buyers looks like for them this summer?
So I think if you are the Reds and you do decide to buy and try to make the most of it, because again, like the Central is very much up for grabs, very much open. You know, like you said, we have the Reds with only about a 20% chance to make the playoffs, but projected to finish at 79 wins. We have the Brewers projected to win the division at 82 wins. You know, that gap is nothing. And you know, what helps, I think, is that for Cincinnati is the rest of the Central is about as weak, all facing roughly the same schedule. No one has any real advantage there. So if you're Cincinnati and you do really want to press this, I think there are a few places you can look. First and foremost, I think the obvious one is the rotation. Some of that is, you know, they just have a lot of pitcher injuries right now, in particular Hunter Green, Nick Lodolo, and he's been terrible, but Graham Ashcraft. Three guys I think they were counting on for a lot of rotation help, who for the most part, I mean, Lodolo's been hurt most of the year, Ashcraft's been very bad, Green just went on the injured list. You know, that's a bad group right now. Andrew Abbott, Luke Weaver, Brandon Williamson, Ben Lively, and fifth starter TBD. You know, I think that is definitely somewhere where the Reds would probably, I think, make the most sense for them to target, in particular, given that their lineup is very full right now, to the point where, you know, granted, there's some dudes hurt right now, so they can kind of, you know, wait and see, but...
like, where does Spencer Steer fit in now?
Right, where does Spencer Steer fit in? How are you balancing TJ Friedel and Jake Fraley and Will Benson all being left-handed outfielders? You know, what are you doing? You know, is Jonathan India going to be a starter full-time? You know, what are you doing with Matt McClay? You know, some of these questions will be answered in the offseason and over time. But I think especially, and this is, you know, depending, I think, especially on how long it takes or whether or not the Reds decide to bring Christian Encarnacion Strand up. I mean, we've already seen them starting to clear the decks, but they got rid of Will Myers yesterday after bringing him off the injured list. They optioned Stuart Fairchild down to the minors. They're kind of, you know, they seem to be setting their lineup, and I think that's a lineup that they can kind of just leave set. I think the one place you might look to say, not sure about this, and this depends too on how Votto performs, is Tyler Stevenson at catcher. I liked it a lot more when Stevenson could play DH more often because he is not a particularly good catcher. But with Votto back and with Spencer Steer there, first base DH at-bats are not really open right now for Stevenson, particularly given that Steer is also a right-hander. I don't know if it makes sense to have him in kind of a loose platoon with Votto, but either way, maybe you're looking at some kind of catching help there. The backup catcher in Cincinnati is Kirk Casale at 35. A useful veteran, but I don't know if he's a guy you want to be playing all the time if you do want to value the catcher defense, particularly with young pitching. The other place I would target would be their bullpen. Obviously, Alexis Diaz, one of the best closers in baseball right now, but the rest of that group does not really give you much hope. Lucas Sims, Buck Farmer, Ian Gibaut. I literally don't recognize Alan Busenitz. That's a lawyer name. Is that not a lawyer? That's a lawyer. They have a lawyer in their bullpen.
He might be on both.
I think pitching ultimately is what Cincinnati needs to focus on, both in the rotation and the bullpen, if they want to make an actual playoff push. I know they have some useful arms down within their system who could maybe help out as needed. Levi Stout could be one of them. Ricky Karcher, guys like Carson Spears down in Double-A. I don't know that they want to rush Leon Richardson or Connor Phillips. Phillips, maybe he's been very good this season. I think might be a guy who has maybe gets a look in the summer, or later in the summer, depending what Cincinnati does going forward and how Green and Lodolo and Ashcraft recover from their injuries. But yeah, if I'm Nick Krall, I am calling up the teams. I'm calling teams up and just asking, what do you want for your pitching? What's interesting to you? I think that's what Cincinnati needs to do. Again, barring injury somewhere else.
Yeah. And I think there are options. This is a good place to be if you're Cincinnati. You have too many good players.
Yeah, it's never a bad thing to have too many good players, because then you can always, you can always make it work with that.
For sure. John, Derek Jeter preparing for broadcasting this weekend in the London series. The interview, he really just didn't say anything. I went through this whole Fox Sports interview.
Anything ever.
He's so good at it. He's a Hall of Famer just for that alone.
Yeah,
the man can.